Here on YourErie.com, we're starting a new segment called Page 2, where there's always more to the story. First, we have Samiar Nefzi. Samiar did a story about animal abuse and neglect with the Anna Shelter. Hi, Samiar.
Hi, Odessa. Thanks for having me on Page 2, the first segment of that. Super excited to be here.
Of course. So tell us a little bit more about your story involving animal neglect. You know, you did a story about
Right.
Goldie and Chopper. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, that's right. Goldie and Chopper. So it was right after the Remy case with the Anna Shelter. And Remy, of course, Remington also is his name. He was left in a Conneaut Lake apartment, starving there, but they eventually did find his owners. But check this out. A day after that case, they actually had another call at the Anna Shelter from a concerned neighbor in the Crawford County area about these two dogs, Goldie, who's a 2-year-old terrier mix, and Chopper, a 9-month-old pit mix. So this neighbor noticed these dogs had injuries to them. They're these wounds that were open, and they weren't getting the proper veterinary care that they needed. So they reached out to the Anna Shelter, and of course, Eric Duckett, who's one of their humane officers, and their other humane officer also went out to check on these dogs. And there they found out that they actually had chemical burns, and it was in industrial strength Drano that was actually sprayed on these dogs. So what happened, I guess, with that case is the owner was trying to unclog a drain, which you would do with Drano, and I guess the bottom part was an open area, and the dogs are wrestling around by his feet allegedly, and Chopper, who's a 9-month-old pit mix, accidentally bumped into it, breaking that pipe, and then the Drano spilt on him, and he shook it off at some point, and it got on Goldie, and it caused extensive damage to these dogs. It was probably one of the grossest photos I've ever looked at. Ruth Thompson, who's the executive director of the Anna Shelter, showed me those. She didn't put those on the internet, of course, but they were super disturbing images. And I mean, even the images that they did release showing those dogs through their veterinary care, they were taken down to Pittsburgh for a specialty emergency clinic, and there you got to see that. And right now they are on a better track though, but yeah, long road for them, super gross. The Anna Shelter is saying in their 15 years, this is probably the worst injuries that they've seen on dogs.
I saw those photos. Those were definitely very disturbing to see, so I know exactly what you're talking about. But on a happier note, tell me about Remy. I know he,
yes.
went through a long time going through recovery and everything, and now he's finding a home.
That is right. So Emily Danskin, shout out to her. That is Remy's foster parent with the Anna Shelter. She also works there. She does a lot of great work. So thank you to you, Emily. But she took in Remy as her foster puppy right now. So I actually got to meet him for the first time. I wasn't at the station when they came here to do the story, so I was a little upset then. But yeah, just looking at that footage from then to his progress now, he's able to actually bark. I know how random that sounds, but whenever he was here, he could barely bark, and Eric Duckett, the main officer, actually had to hold him. He was super weak, fragile, but now seeing him, I think it's just like a week and a half later, Remy is has that full coonhound bark, beautiful howl that he has, but he's able to wiggle around. He's building his strength up. I know Emily put his progress up on their Facebook page with a couple videos showing him running around. So it's super cool to see that progress with the dog that started out in such a rough condition. You know, he's emaciated, dehydrated, and then seeing them nurse him back to health is so great. But he also is no longer up for adoption. Super great news right there. His rescuer, the first person who actually found him and then contacted the Anna Shelter, that person filed for adoption. And it's really nice covering these types of stories when the people who are adopting these dogs reach out, not only to the shelter, of course, because they want to know the rest of their story and to see how that ends, but they let me know who they were and that they were adopting them. And they said they are super excited to have Remy come over and meet him and actually integrate him into the family. And it's just such a happy story with that ending.
Yeah, that was definitely my favorite part of the story, hearing that the people that initially rescued him are adopting him. That's amazing. You never really hear anything like that.
Yeah, it's definitely that happy ever after, fairy tale storyline right there.
How does it make you feel? I know you've been covering these stories basically since you got here, these animal abuse stories, and I know they can be hard on just seeing what these dogs went through.
Yeah, I think all of us here at Jet 24, Fox 66, YourErie.com are all very much animal lovers, so I think any of these stories are very passionate to all of us. But I myself, I love all animals. Snakes I'm not fond of, spiders, but for the most part, household animals I very much do like. I grew up with them. So seeing these stories, they're heartbreaking. I think they're heartbreaking for the viewers, you guys at home, to watch them. They're hard to report on, and they're also extremely hard on the Anna Shelter staff. staff, as you can imagine, taking these animals in, especially with Chopper and Goldie, their case, that one's just so horrifying. Or even the Venango dogs from when I first got here, seeing those dogs that were starving and just their debilitating place that they were at. So I think they obviously take a toll. And I mean, even watching them and seeing those pictures, you know, it bugs me to watch them. As I got a call about the story with Goldie, excuse me, and Chopper, and people were like, I don't want to see those images. And it's like, unfortunately, that's part of the narrative, so we show them. But I mean, yeah, they're disturbing to look at. I mean, you can't help but feel awful for those animals. And then you also have to wonder about, I guess, the mindset of those people and what they're doing whenever they do have these cases with those animals.
Definitely, but I know you've definitely done a good job covering all of these stories. Is there anything else that you wanted to tell us about these animal abuse stories that you've been covering?
No, I mean, they're great stories to cover. They're unfortunate stories, but it's great to be able to get your foot into that and actually explore those stories and share them with the area community and then online, so that who knows where they're reaching. But it's always great to have those stories, and you feel like you're bringing justice to that. I mean, I know whenever you cover cases like in court or with city, county, and councils, like you get your justice that way or whatever platform. But it's nice to be able to actually see something happen with these stories.
Thank you so much, Samir, for joining us and telling us more about your stories. We've definitely enjoyed hearing more behind the scenes about everything. But thank you for joining us for Page 2 on YourErie.com.